Welcome to the new world of animal allies, the doctors, volunteers, pet owners and other surprising visitors who are out there making a difference. In Animal Doctors, 2 vets are out to save Australia's wildlife. While in Europe, some very abused monkeys are rescued by animal helpers. This week's How-To looks at the delicate art of caring for fish. And Animal World opens the doors to one of London's greatest animal allies, the Blue Cross Animal Hospital.
Professor Ralph Swan and Dr. Chris Warren from Murdoch University have arrived at the Kenyana Native Wildlife Sanctuary. These 2 animal doctors specialise in Australian native wildlife. The Kenyana Wildlife Sanctuary was founded by June Butcher and her husband 20 years ago to provide a place for people to bring sick and injured native animals. Many animals come and go in a matter of hours, but some can end up staying for years.
Hi June, what have you got for us today?
Well, we've got a southern brown bandicoot or quenda that was hit by a car. He's been licking his back feet and needs some dressings done and some injections and treatment.
Inside the hospital, Professor Ralph and Dr. Chris are getting ready for the day's consultations.
Yes, better scrub up after that. Get rid of these gloves.
Meanwhile, some of the other volunteers are preparing breakfast for the animals. This naked creature is a baby western grey kangaroo. He's only a few months old and hasn't developed fur yet. Like many of the animals that are brought here, he's an orphan because his mother was the victim of a road accident.
He's 500 grams, so he is a good size. He's a good size furless joey, and in experienced hands he's got a very good chance of surviving. It's just really hard initially to get them feeding and the body temperature stabilised, and once we get all those things going, they usually go very, very well.
He will remain completely furless until he is 6 months old. In another part of the hospital, Professor Ralph and Dr. Chris are seeing their first patient of the day.
This is our little southern brown bandicoot.
What's the story behind this one?
He's a car accident and he's started to lick his back feet, so obviously the sensation's not too good here.
Okay.
So we're going to need a dressing on both these feet.
With bandicoots in general, you have to be quite careful when they're being treated. The stress associated with treatment can cause them to self-mutilate quite badly. Just keep the head covered.
They have to remove the dressing from behind the feet to see what damage has been done. The dressing not only helps the wounds heal, but stops the bandicoot from doing any more damage to itself.
He's done a good job.
He did that to himself?
Just licking.
And why would he do that to himself?
Maybe the tingling sensation associated with the injury, or sometimes just the stress associated with various injuries, or even captivity, depending on how they're housed, can cause them to self-mutilate.
Do you see this very often in bandicoots?
They're quite common with bandicoots.
These creatures are particularly delicate, and there have been cases where mothers have eaten their young because of the stress associated with injury.
Themselves.
And that's the trouble, with domestic animals. You can put Elizabethan collars and all sorts of things on them to stop them doing it. But with wild animals like this, you just can't.
Some of the slough has come off. You can see pink tissue there now, which is good.
The edge there, isn't it?
So I think it's working, what we're doing. It's a matter of hanging in there now and getting it a bit cleaner.
As Dr. Chris cleans the animal's paw, Professor Ralph prepares a dose of antibiotic to help the infection clear up. But before injecting it, the wounded feet are bound up again.
Just kill all the young ones.
Providing the bandicoot doesn't eat through his dressings, he'll be back on his feet and out in the wild in a couple of weeks. But Dr. Chris and Professor Ralph are also here today to see this creature. It's a bilby, a nocturnal marsupial, incredibly rare and very fragile.
This is a new research project that we're starting. It's actually called the Bilby Health Project. And basically the idea is to develop a program that will monitor the health and diseases of bilbies, both pre and post release, in order to develop a model that will be useful in other endangered species programs.
In Animal Doctors Part 2, we'll follow Dr. Chris and Professor Swan into the outback, where they'll set up an operating theatre to help save the endangered bilby.
This monkey is a prisoner. Around the world, thousands of wild animals are held captive. Taken from their families and natural habitats, they're victims in a cruel and callous trade, and young chimps are some of the most prized trophies. This is a confrontation between a cameraman from the Worldwide Fund for Nature and a street photographer at a Spanish beach. The chimp is used to give tourists a cute reminder of their holiday, but as animal helper Stuart Chapman from the WWF explains, the reality is different.
If the baby chimp, which is probably about 3 or 4 months old, has survived the movement from Africa to Europe, then really the horrors begin. Many of them had their fingernails and their teeth extracted so they wouldn't bite tourists or scratch tourists. Also, they would be drugged so they would be calm, because the young chimps are really lively animals and they want to dance around and play around. And of course, that isn't good for photography.
Monkey World was set up in a quiet corner of Dorset in the UK, and it's where some of the lucky survivors end up. For every live chimp who makes it from Africa to Europe, an estimated 10 others die. Keeper Jim Crownan explains that at Monkey World they have the opportunity to live in a wild environment again.
Rehabilitation is extremely difficult. It's the hardest work that we do, in terms of that the chimpanzees are coming here, they've been brutalized, they are psychologically damaged. What we're doing is we're having to take chimpanzees and put them with their own kind again, so that we take a 3 or 4-year-old chimp and put him with 3 or 4 other chimps his own age. Then we introduce him to adults so that he's got a role model.
The 48-acre park is made up of 5 natural enclosures and is home to 40 chimpanzees and 80 other primates of various species. There's even a small nursery where the very young monkeys can be cared for separately. But despite the attention to detail in the carefully thought-out sanctuary, it's unlikely that these monkeys will ever go home again.
We've often talked about sending chimps back to the wild. The problem with sending chimps to the wild, or the romantic notion of let's return him to the wild, is number one, he doesn't know what that is anymore. More importantly, the wild's disappearing. You know, it really isn't born free. It isn't free and wonderful and lovely out there. It's a life and death process, and it's very difficult for chimps to survive. There's nowhere for them to go back. The wild's disappearing.
Monkey World also provides homes for other abused primates, many of whom were destined for animal experiments. These pig-tailed macaques still bear the tattoos they were given when held in a laboratory in France, where they were kept in tiny cages. In another enclosure, spot-nosed guenons were brought to the park by the Royal Society for the Protection of Animals. They were found living in appalling conditions in a garden shed in the UK. But Monkey World has greater plans for the future. They want to try innovative new feeding regimes, including planting crops in the enclosures so the monkeys can forage for food like they do in the wild. It may not be the home they were born into, but it is one where they'll be safe and cared for. After the break, Animal Allies returns with a special look at the Blue Cross Animal Hospital, while Professor Ralph and Dr. Chris set up their Outback Operating Theatre. Keeping fish can be a very time-consuming hobby. From common household goldfish to the more exotic marine species, there's more to keeping fish than simply feeding them. Animal Ally's Guide to Keeping Fish. Joe Pecorelli, curator of fish at the London Aquarium, reveals the key to keeping healthy fish.
Before you get your fish, the most important thing is you do some research. You find out about the natural environment of the fish. Make sure you know how big it's going to get, where it lives, what sort of water quality it lives in. And then once you have a simple fish setup, you need to do 5 tests minimum on a routine basis. Firstly, make sure there's enough oxygen for the fish. All animals need oxygen. You can provide that with a simple little air pump here. Once you've oxygenated your water, you need to make sure that the temperature is constant for the fish. You can use a simple thermometer for that.
Even the slightest change in temperature can be stressful for the fish, causing their immune system to break down.
If you're keeping marine fish, you obviously need to make sure they're in a constant salinity, so you can use a hydrometer.
It's also vital to maintain a constant pH level. Saltwater fish prefer an alkaline pH, whereas freshwater fish thrive at the neutral to acid end of the spectrum.
Once you've got your fish in the setup, they'll be excreting into the water. So you need to make sure you monitor those chemicals, because if they build up too much, they'll become toxic. We use a test kit like this, but you can get simple box test kits from a fish shop.
Like humans, fish require a healthy, balanced diet containing protein, carbohydrates and fats.
But also what's significant for your fish is looking at the way they feed, whether they feed from the surface, whether they feed from the bottom. All these things are catered for in the feeds that are prepared in your fish shop.
But before rushing out and buying a fish tank, remember this week's Animal Ally's how-to. Research the fish, know its natural habitat, how big it will grow and its dietary requirements. Oxygenate the water and maintain a constant temperature. Test the salinity and ammonia levels regularly. Sustain a stable pH. Provide the fish with a balanced diet. For more than a century, Britain's Blue Cross Animal Welfare Charity has been providing veterinary care for those unable to afford private treatment for their pets. Inspired by Queen Victoria's call for British people to protect all animals, the charity was founded in 1897 as Our Dumb Friends League, a name unlikely to make it into this century. Beginning with workhorses, the League slowly expanded to treat all animals in need. These days, the Blue Cross runs 4 hospitals and opens its doors to more than 55,000 animals every year. Well aware of the charity's unique role in the community is Director of Veterinary Services, Dick Voigt.
The Blue Cross is here primarily, of course, to look after the animals and ensure their well-being, but at the same time it very much appreciates the benefits of animals to their owners. And as such, it provides treatment for people, the animals of people who cannot afford the fees of private veterinary surgeons. People who, without us, would not have their animals treated when they're ill or injured.
The Blue Cross mainly sees pets owned by elderly, unemployed and homeless people. Jess Gower is Chief Veterinary Surgeon at the charity's busiest hospital in London's Victoria district. Helping not only animals but also their owners is what has kept her here for the past 8 years.
A lot of our owners, particularly the elderly people, live alone, or people out on the street who again may need a best friend, a companion, and so for them their pet dog or their pet cat may be very much the central companion of their life. So it's very rewarding for us that when things go wrong that they're safe to come here and know that we will help and do whatever the animal needs to look after it.
The Blue Cross is a charity that relies on donations from clients and the wider community to survive. Keeping up with advances in technology as well as an ever-increasing workload is expensive. Recently, an appeal was launched to raise funds to rebuild the organisation's oldest and busiest animal hospital in Victoria. Among the charity's celebrity supporters was TV racing tipster John McCririck and his dog Smelly.
So the Blue Cross do a tremendous job looking after everybody's animals. So whatever pain they're in, or they need surgery, or they need help, veterinary kind of help, that's given by the Blue Cross. So we should all support a cause like that. The animals shouldn't suffer, whatever the failings of human beings.
Also a supporter of the Blue Cross is actor Miranda Richardson.
Once you have an animal in your life, they become essential. They're your companions, they're loyal, they're all the things you've ever heard people say about them. It's really true.
Another famous animal lover in attendance was world-renowned psychic and spoonbender Uri Geller.
I'm down here today because I love animals, all animals, especially dogs. I have 4 dogs, and if I can support any good cause that will help the animal kingdom, I'll be there.
But it's people like Billy Irvine who truly understand the role of the Blue Cross. A pensioner who lives alone with his dog Queenie and sometimes her friend Tina, Billy is typical of the clients the charity is there to help.
Money-wise, I can't afford to pay a vet to look after the dogs, so the Blue Cross does it for me. I give them what I can afford out of my pension.
Grateful for the care his animals have received over the years, Billy devotes much of his time to collecting money for the Blue Cross and recently won the Lambeth Council's Civic Award for his achievements.
Anything that I can do for the Blue Cross is worthwhile.
Always ready to lend a hand, Billy was at the appeal launch to show his support for an organisation that he relies on for his beloved Queenie.
More than a dog, she's my companion. At the moment, she's my family.
There isn't a national health service for pets, so unless you can afford private care, there is nowhere to turn. So I think if we didn't exist, people would still keep pets, but when they were ill or when there was an accident, they simply would have nowhere medical to go. So without us, I can see nothing really except people and animal suffering.
I think people support us for 2 reasons. Primarily because we're actually helping animals that would otherwise suffer from injuries, from sickness, but it is certainly a factor that we're helping people as well, particularly certain groups.
Funds raised by the appeal will go towards rebuilding the original Victoria Animal Hospital. After more than 90 years of service, it's well past its sell-by date.
It's a much better diagnostic and surgical situation for the animals, and it's also much better for the staff who were working so hard at Victoria just to try to keep things clean and aseptic, and it was a very difficult working environment for them, and it'll be such a pleasure to see animals and staff in a building that's up to the work that it's doing.
With a new purpose-built hospital added to its list of facilities, the Blue Cross can continue to deliver the standard of service people have grown to depend on.
I just think this is the most immensely rewarding organisation to be involved in. I hadn't heard of the Blue Cross until I took the job. I wouldn't have imagined that I would stay one place for 8 years. But it's just such an immensely special place with very special people, because all the staff here have taken a very conscious animal and people welfare decision that this is where they want to work. And I can't imagine working anywhere else.
Outback Australia is not the most likely place to set up an operating theatre, but Dr. Chris and Professor Ralph have a huge task ahead of them, and so they've come to one of the few remaining areas in the country which is still home to the Bealby. In order to help with the Bealby project, the 2 vets are setting up a sophisticated monitoring programme. After collecting the small marsupials, the vets sedate them so they can be examined. This helps them keep track of the numbers still out there in the wild and their ongoing ability to survive.
Well, I think the bilby is a classic case where you have a species that was once widespread right across Australia and now has been reduced to very small pockets to about 20% of its former range.
As well as an overall checkup, Professor Ralph and Dr. Chris are also going to implant a computer chip under the bilby's skin. This harmless device will help the local rangers and vets monitor the fragile animal, ensuring that the species still has a real chance of survival in what was once their natural habitat. Back at Kenyana Wildlife Centre, June is also doing her bit by setting up a bilby breeding programme. The babies they will eventually produce will be released back into the bush, boosting the fragile wild population to new heights. Bilbies used to live all over the continent, but 200 years ago they fell victim to the new predators brought by the colonists. Introduced predators like foxes, cats and wild dogs have brought the species to the brink of extinction. But because of the continuing work by animal doctors like Professor Ralph and Dr. Chris, there's still a hopeful future ahead for Australia's dwindling wildlife.
In the next programme, the new world of animal allies continues when Doc Rogers has a patient who's too precious to lose. And on the coastline of Australia, thousands of animal helpers desperately trying to save a group of beached whales.